In this video, I want to introduce you to our Emergency Applications Companion, which as its name implies is a companion to the Emergency Self-Report and the Emergency Exposure Management applications released by ServiceNow. One of the first things we did to add to the functionality of the self-report is provide multiple ways in which the consumers can report their self-status. So one of those options is to embed a widget onto the self-service page that maybe is in existence today for people to check the status of their tickets that will alert and prompt the user to fill in their health status if they don't already have one. Included in this is a list of a legend to make it easy for the user to understand what the different health statuses are, what they mean, and they can best choose which status is appropriate for them. There's also options if they feel like they're experiencing particular symptoms to launch the screening tool introduced by Apple and go through the screening process to ensure they shouldn't go to the hospital or go through further testing. You'll notice it's an option for them to defer for later. There's system properties around how long later lasts. So when I do this, if I refresh the page, you'll notice I don't get re-asked to fill in that information as part of the modal. So further, when the deferral period passes and the user comes back to the portal, they'll get that modal, that pop-up again to kind of ask for health status. Upon selecting a health status, choose something like in quarantine or I'm sick, you'll see one of the things that these do is whenever I have a situation where I'm been exposed or I'm having symptoms, it's going to look for when was I exposed and kind of what are some of the potential impacted users. So we're tying together the self-report now with the exposure management application. So as the user fills this information, they're getting a list of all the meetings they've been involved with in that period of time, and they can denote if any of these meetings had any face-to-face contact with individuals, and then ultimately if those individuals that were involved in those meetings were likely exposed. The end result is that the list of individuals that are impacted are part of that health record as well. Another aspect of this is once health status has been submitted, or if the individual is an HR employee or has other people that report to them, a banner is embedded at the top of the page to provide them some information about the health status. So they can see their health status, they can see their additional employees at the top as well if that was applicable to them. And they can then update their status from here. So if they're returning back to work, they can mark that as returning back to work as well. The output of the self-reporting through the portal are these health tasks or crisis tasks. And the way it works, there's two that are spawned, one for the manager, one for HR. On these tasks, you'll see an estimated end date or listed as an estimated start date. But basically, this is the end of the quarantine period. So based off the health status, there's a date that's used to compute the end date of when the person would likely be returning back to work. Also want to highlight that in these situations, we're highlighting which users which tasks the individual has open to them that may need to be reassigned. Also, those affected users, one that came through the prompts of the meetings, as well as those that are in the same similar location. You'll also notice that one of the things we've added in here is this list of checklists. And so this is going to be dependent on health status. So based off your health status, a list of checklists are going to show up for what to do for the manager when someone goes into a quarantine kind of state. Also, you'll see there's a task for HR that has specific tasks in a checklist for the HR individuals when someone goes into quarantine or is returning back to work. Another entry point for submitting your health and your status of your health is through the virtual agent chatbot. So I can start typing something like report health, and I'll see I may have been exposed to COVID-19. I can select this. And then first of all, we're presenting them with a list of the screening tool that I can launch and see whether I've been tested, whether I need to go to the hospital or be formally tested. Then we're asking if they've been tested positive. If I say yes, that's going to end the chain, record as me having symptoms and need to be quarantined. If I say no, the questions will continue to ask whether or not I'm experiencing any symptoms. If I say no, then it's going to look and see whether I've been in contact or exposed with anybody else. So I'm going to say yes in this circumstance just to show you in this case that I would be tied to an exposure situation, and we'll tie in the exposure management application is here. Now, one of the things you'll see it's asking for location. One of our features we have is to map where all these occurrences are happening. On record, this individual is in the Houston location, but maybe they're working from home in Kansas City with their family. Right, so I can say no. And then they could choose the Kansas City location. And now on record, that Kansas City location will be stored as the location of this particular health record. Now the last step of this, you'll see it's exposing kind of that estimated end date of my status going into this quarantine period, as well as the exposure assessment impact link. So when I click this, it's going to launch out into a separate page here to put in those date ranges of when I've been exposed, the individual meetings that I've been involved with during that period of time, those that have been face-to-face, and then the individuals that have been impacted as a result of those meetings. Once a health status has been recorded, you'll also see there's an option here for Update My Health Status. Simple prompts here to be able to click and choose which of what's my new status that I want to report. It's also worth noting that if the individual logged into the system has people that report to them as employees, there's also an option here to update health for my employees. And then I'll be prompted with which employee do I want to update their health. Choose the employee, and then I can adjust their health status to match the current status that they're reporting. The third way we've made self-reporting of your status easy is we've added an application to the Now Mobile application. You'll see at the bottom we've got this self-report option, so I can click on the self-report option. And again, this is only going to be available for those users that have the self-reporting or crisis user task role. And so you'll see I don't currently have any status listed. My employees are listed here on this home page with their status that I can click into and see the details. I can update their statuses here. I also have some information about working from home. I see information about if I believe I have symptoms. Things from the knowledge base are exposed and listed here. If I have HR related roles or rights, you'll see I've got HR tasks and HR employee management in my map. But I can quickly come in here and say I want to report my health. You'll see it's asking for me to share my location. Again, we're taking the location information from where the individual currently is rather than what's on profile. So I can share my current location. I can say I'm in a quarantine situation. You'll see there's options here to do the screening tool as mentioned before. I can submit this, and because I have symptoms or I'm in a quarantine status and being prompted for exposure dates, I can choose this, see my individual meetings that I was involved with during that period of time, check if any of these were in person, and then ultimately the individuals that I may have exposed as a result of those in-person meetings. The result is then I have a health status record that I can view and look at. I can add comments to, share with my HR individuals, and vice versa. And notice the same process is here. If I want to open up a health record for employees, I can choose options to report health for one of my employees, adjust their status, and submit that as well. Lastly, you'll see if chatbot or virtual agent is part of your license, you can also launch the chatbot to use those conversations on the mobile device to report or update your health status. Also mentioned HR has got tasks out here they can interact with, so they can find their various employees that have statuses, update their status, add comments in the activity stream, see the checklist activities, etc. And then ultimately they can also see them from a map view to see concentrations of individuals and health status in different regions, such as 2 people in quarantine in Utah. Map of employees has also been exposed in the native UI, so you see more of a concentration here of the larger bubble, the larger icon is the number of individuals that have been impacted or have reported either in quarantine or reporting symptoms in that area. We can see a list of, in this case, 10, and based off the threshold, either the icons are going to change color based off of whether or not they're multiple cases or whether or not there's single cases in those areas, as well as the size. Last thing I want to highlight is all of the widgets have been adjusted to report in multiple different languages. We've made all these things supporting multiple languages. Here's one in Spanish as an example. You'll see our individual widgets that load on the page. We'll update in those languages as well, including the drop-down of values, or in this case Spanish, since I'm logged in as a Spanish user. And the same applies to the mobile application as well. So hopefully this is helpful in seeing our companion application, kind of how we're augmenting, adding functionality to what comes out of the box with the self-report and the exposure management and tying those two applications together. Thank you.